Hello and welcome to this session. My name is Jacqui and I'm here as one of the panelists. I've got three other panel members with me today, so I will introduce them in due course. But first of all, I thought it would be useful to perhaps give a bit of a short abstract about what it is that we are talking about today, because I think that some of our information didn't quite make it into the program. So you might not have seen it, but it also gives you a very useful overview. So where our work comes from is really organisational. We are not psychologists, and we don't come from any of the mental health profession. So the overview is that we were working, a number of us working with veterans, and we're well aware that the mental health and wellbeing struggles of Australian veterans have been the cornerstone of numerous parliamentary inquiries and commission studies. I think what's motivated us to be involved in this is that there's been a failure of any real progress in halting the rates of suicide amongst serving and ex-serving ADF. And there, obviously, if you follow any of this world, you'll know that there have been calls for royal commissions into veteran suicide. And so we decided that we'd ask a very different question. The question is, what is working? Very solution focused. And sometimes those simplest questions can lead you down a path of creativity and options that you could never have imagined. And so out of that came the Veteran Wellbeing Summit 2019. And then obviously we're into 2020 and we're running this again in this year. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the SF24 organisers for putting on this event, 24 hours around the globe and online. The panellists in this session can actually genuinely appreciate what goes into something like this, as most of our discussion is actually based on a very similar concept. We ran last year over 4 weeks online with 50 live presentations and reached a significant number of people. But as I said, we're not psychologists or medical people. The panel here today are some of the members of the Veteran Wellbeing Summit Organising Committee. We do find ourselves in the role of the accidental counsellor, a friend and confidant on a regular basis. None of the team here with me today had actually heard about SF or solution focused anything in any particular way before having met me. In fact, in their world, the acronym of SF actually refers to Special Forces. And well, I guess that they are a particular type of solution. But the SF Solution Focus formed the framework for the summit and the way in which we wanted the presentations and the direction of the discussions to move. Every presenter was briefed on the themes and the approach, and what was critical in all of that was the presupposition that things were working. I think you muted me as well, Dan, thanks. Sorry. That's all right. So the focus of the work that we were doing is around action, hope and transformation, gathering stories and people who have success in veteran wellbeing, mental health and suicide prevention. We wanted to get away from the heavy policy stuff, and we didn't want to get caught up in the tragedy of what wasn't working, but really focusing on what was working. So all of the successes that we brought together form a part of solving that puzzle. And the sessions, as a rule, did not spend time discussing the problems and challenges. We all knew that what wasn't working. But what we wanted to do, and we weren't ignoring that either. There were certainly matters of justice that needed to be dealt with. But in the meantime, veterans, their partners and families have got a right to live their best lives now. And we challenge the presenters to demonstrate how they work, the work that they do actually builds on action, hope and transformation. One of the common misconceptions about solution focused, which any of you who do practice in the area would know, is that people think that you're ignoring the problem. And even in an organisational sense, an organisational application, this is not the case. So I think it's probably timely now we introduce our team. So Dan, do you want to say hello and tell the group who you are?
My name's Daniel Sloan. I'm the president of South Lake Macquarie RSL sub branch, which is the Return and Services League of Australia. New South Wales branch.
So, and served in the Navy?
I served in the Royal Australian Navy, and following being medically discharged, I got stuck into the veterans advocacy, welfare, and lobbying for veterans benefits and issues.
Thanks, Dan. Darren?
Hi, I'm Darren McManus-Smith. I'm a retired Army. Since leaving the Army, I've worked in the veterans advocacy and wellbeing field. The thing that I have focused on most has been adaptive sports or healing through sports.
Thanks, Darren. And Wayne?
G'day, Wayne Hopkins, ex-Royal Australian Air Force. I served for 21 years, and I was medically discharged in 2011. After that time, I struggled with a few issues, both mental and physical, and found my way into a recovery pattern that has led me to this sort of area where I can help other people find their way forward rather than looking backwards.
Okay, awesome. And we'll sort of caveat on Wayne's appearance on the panel. He may get called away. There's a grandchild on its way, first grandchild. So Wayne, if you need to go, just wave and leave, and we'll wish you all the very best.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, so just moving on then, I think that my question to the panel then is, why be involved in veteran wellbeing to start with?
Well, yeah,
go Dan. Yep.
Yeah, well, like you said earlier, there's a lot of information out there, toing and froing between government departments and other medical associations, and we're still seeing veterans struggling. The suicide rates are dropping with all the initiatives that the government's putting out, and there's a lot of things going on in a smaller space that are helping veterans in local areas and stuff like that. So to sort of promote more self-help within the veteran community. So it was really good for us to get on board and have a look at these alternative ways other than just medication, and work out what is working in the wider veteran community.
Wayne?
Yeah, well said, Dan. Yeah, I sort of, as I sort of said before, I lost my way a little bit to start with, and it took a while to work out what would work for me. And I did find that there was a lot of entities outside of government organisations which actually provided more benefit and more solutions, rather than diagnosing and pigeonholing me.
Yeah. And Darren?
So for me, one of the biggest things I learned upon leaving Defence was how veterans are so very easily, as Wayne just said, pigeonholed. For those people that, in particular, the ones that I've worked with a permanent incapacity of some sort, we have a problem in Australia and no doubt internationally, that these people start to identify as this problem or as this incapacity or impairment. The regular go-to through different government departments and clinicians is medication. Medicate. I'm not a clinician or a medically trained person, but it was my personal belief there had to be another way. On top of that, we've had a pandemic of suicides in the veteran community. It got to the point where we even had the Prime Minister standing up and saying, we have a serious problem. This can't be swept under the carpet anymore. So what myself and several other people that I've worked with and I continue to work with, like my colleagues here, have been looking for a different, not necessarily better, but alternative way to help people cope with their new normal. For me, it's been through sports and social activities. So not for me personally, but I mean for that's the area I've moved into, and we've seen a lot of success.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. We'll get to talk about that a little bit in more detail. One of the challenges when we were looking at veteran wellbeing is that requirement, and you guys have alluded to it, is that requirement of a medical model that says a person has to be labelled with what amounts to a defect notice, which they have to keep for life, or for how long? I mean, it could be a lifetime. So, what are your thoughts about what we did with the Veteran Wellbeing Summit to make that shift to talking about what is working? Why was that so important?
I'll kick this one off. The information wasn't out there previously. We had government departments again that do their best under very, very strict guidelines. The information wasn't being provided to the veteran community, and I will speak about the veteran community, not the current serving. Upon discharge, in particular, people with permanent incapacities or injuries of any type, they leave and they've got this massive gulf of separation. It's a loss. They suffer a grieving process and a loss, unless they're very lucky. So what the Wellbeing Summit provided for many was information. And information, like in most things, is the key.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, so the amount of information that we actually discovered, and myself, I was overwhelmed with the amount of information and alternative solutions out there is just amazing. So it was really, really good.
I think part of what we were trying to achieve too was it was the information, but it was also empowering people to actually dip in and out of what they were watching or participating in, to select what it was that appealed to them, because they knew what they wanted. I mean, there were lots and lots of different presentations. We had people who were clinicians, we had people who were just working on social programs, on a variety of different activities that were promoting wellbeing and mental health. But what I thought was really interesting is that we had a significant proportion of the presenters were also veterans themselves. So we had that lived experience of, I've lived your life. I know what it's like to serve. I know what it's like to transition out of service. And then we also had them being able to show ways and means that they had actually been working with people to continually promote that life, a good lifestyle, and a non-clinical way of actually improving their lives. So there was that concept of it being veteran-centric, delivered by veterans, lived experience. It was also, in a lot of ways, it was anonymous, because we had webinars and we had ways of people engaging with the work, with the presentations, that didn't necessarily mean they had to tell us who they were. Some did and gave us that feedback specifically with their name attached to it, but we didn't necessarily ask for that. But we also made it available live and then on demand, so that people could go in at another time and watch it when it was convenient for them. I think what we showed too with this is that when we're looking at the statistics and the data that we collected, was that we reached over 10,000 people in that 4 weeks that we delivered the program. So, that, and we weren't just doing it on the basis of one website hit, for example. They had to go in and register for an event, view an event, and give us feedback for us to actually count that. So that was quite significant in terms of the numbers, if you have a look at what the population of veterans are in the country as well.
Well, I think one of the very important things that we have to point out too, Jacqui, this was done by volunteers. Yes. And so the number 10,000, so if we've got any visitors from Europe or United Kingdom or United States, that might not seem such a large number to them, but here in Australia, the proportion of the veteran community, the serving members, and the fact that this was pulled together on a shoestring budget, and it was so well picked up. And after the 2019 Wellbeing Summit, it was clear that there was a very serious need to continue on into 2020.
Yeah, and which we have done, which has been, you know, we're in the middle of it across the entire year this time. When we're talking about the presentations that were standouts for you and why, which ones would you point to first up?
My first one that I watched and participated in was Barry Zwarstein, sort of on purpose, and he goes into a lot of depth about in layman's terms, so I could understand it was what experiencing a loss from the Defence Force, how it affects you, your mindset, how easily it is that you go down this crazy path of trying to find purpose. So that was really, really, that one there had a lot of impact on me personally. So, and coming onto it, I didn't know what to expect, the presentations, even though we had the titles there, we sort of knew we could research, but we didn't actually know what was going to happen until it happened, because they were live. And the great thing of it was also that we didn't focus on what wasn't working, and we weren't focusing on the political side of it. So we just wanted to showcase to people what was working and what could work for you. So Barry's Warstein was a really good one. Dr. Jonathan Lane, he was really, really good with his programs that he's got running and the support that he needs. Really, really nice fellow. Chris Thompson Lang, really good with the yoga, veterans yoga. Awesome presentation and a really nice fellow. So there's just a couple, but there's so many more. Yeah. And it's just unbelievable the impact that it does have on people and the comments and the feedback you see.
Can we just go back to some specifics about these people, because people who are in this session wouldn't necessarily know these names at all. But Barry Zwarstein is a veteran of the Rhodesian Bush Wars. He currently works in Australia as a psychologist, having done a multitude of other things in his life in between times. But what Barry, which I think is very interesting, is that he is in clinical practice seeing that there is probably a very clear distinction between people who are struggling to adjust in the military transition and PTSD, or and saying that there are actually very not as many PTSD cases as we're perhaps being led to believe. It does exist. It is there. We know people. I mean, you know, all of us on the panel know people who do struggle with that. But they're and have moved on and live their life very in a very full way, having now with techniques to deal with it. But Barry was actually talking about, you know, you shouldn't be leaving your warrior behind, and talking about resource talk. Okay, so in a solution focused sense, talking, you know, using resource talk to actually identify the wonderful things from and fantastic things from service that you can bring into your life. And one of those things, and the very, very, and also to personal point of view, was also about family, and the importance of family. And Wayne, you and I were talking about that briefly yesterday. Do you want to expand on that one?
Well, yeah, I think when I look sideways to colleagues when I was serving, you'd have a 50-50 chance of whether they were with their original family or not. So it's a type of job that is very hard for family life. And some people, when they do discharge, they may or may not have family. For me, I was very lucky that I had a very supporting family. And to the point where they were engaged in negotiations with treating doctors and specialists in looking out for what was best for me. And so from my point of view, had I had not got that support from my wife and kids, I'd be in a very different place where I am to where I am now. And I feel very privileged and lucky that I had that support mechanism. Not everyone does.
Mm.
And I think that's where things like this help people who rely on social connection, and others in a similar situation can form a different type of bond and see a way forward.
Mm. Mm. One of the things that we were very conscious about was ensuring that we had a component of the workshops and presentations that we do that involve family. And one of the presenters that was a standout for me last year and this year is Zoe and Andy Cullen. They work with a charity called PTSD Resurrected and run an intensive program, reboot program. It is very solution focused in its approach. It's about finding the resources and the connections and the people around you, who's in your corner, and drawing on that support, but also too looking at the sorts of things that the mechanisms, the coping mechanisms that people have had. So have you maintained where you are now for as long as you have? How have you coped? What have you been doing that actually helps you cope? So that's another, and also that also speaks very much to the importance of family. The support of, so that program runs with family involved. So, you know, husbands and wives attend together, parents and children attend together. There might be a sibling that goes along with this as a support person to attend the program alongside. So that support, knowing that, you know, who your resources are is actually pretty critical. We're running these courses online, which has been really interesting, seeing how people actually connect online. You wouldn't think it would be possible, and people are saying, well, none of this can happen unless it's face-to-face, but we've actually proven that that's not the case, that you can actually do a hell of a lot online. Darren, what for you was interesting from last year in the learnings, particularly about taking things online?
So for me, this was a very, very new experience online. It's a little bit late to coming onto the online world. I have to initially agree with Dan. They were also my favourite sessions. The information that was coming out, I think the most important thing for me, what I saw and what I experienced, is that these were all result focused, outcome focused. They arrived with statistics, research. It wasn't, in the veteran community, we have a lot of people that are very well-meaning and warm and fuzzy sometimes. What we had with the Wellbeing Summit is, you know, outcome focused, and really that's what it is. And it's not an alternative to the normal or the traditional clinical options. It's in addition to. And well, for example, one of the things that I'd always seen, hadn't paid much attention to, and you have to forgive me because I don't remember the presenter's name, but it was the equine therapy. And to see the results from equine therapy, I was always one of these people that were, you know, very interested to listen, a little bit unsure of it, but seeing the results, seeing the statistics, and then following that up with speaking to people that have been involved with it, that was something that was very special. Yeah,
I think you're right. And the sessions that were actually really had other high impact and engagement scores were around assistance animals and animal therapy, and using and the information was just sensational. I think that perhaps where we're lagging a little bit behind in Australia is that, and I've being deferential here to our colleagues who are online from the US, the UK and Canada, is that you have got a mountain of research there that shows that animal assistance and assistance animal therapy do have significant lasting impacts for healing and well-being. Yet in Australia, we're sort of constantly trying to reinvent the wheel.
Well, I'm a convert. I was like others that you know, considered it a pet. rather than a form of therapy. You know, after researching it and seeing the results, you know, I'm definitely a convert.
No, that's interesting. And so we've got, even now, we've got lots of people that go back to those presentations and contact us and so on. It's interesting, we're mentioning Chris Thompson-Lang. Chris is the co-founder of Frontline Yoga, and which is specifically a program for veterans, using yoga and yoga techniques to improve their well-being and health. I am not a fan of yoga. I will put that right out there. Philosophically, I've got an issue with it, but also too, I don't think I can actually, the thought of actually being able to move like that, makes me, I feel pain instantly thinking about it. But I think that it was such an interesting example, though, of him talking about the physiology of finding, of using your mind to find solutions to the, you know, the hypervigilance, to the anxiety attacks, to all of those things that, you know, some people do struggle with. But it was just done in such a beautiful way. And you actually interviewed him, Darren, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And again, some may think I have a closed mind. Maybe I did previously, but research that he'd done and how he put it in, the really important thing was how he was able to deliver it to a serving member or a veteran. He was able to put it into, for lack of a better term, speak that military people can understand. It wasn't all the Eastern philosophy. It was, you know, it was real practical advice.
No, I think that's such an important thing. You know, when we're talking about, you know, none of us mentioned solution focus to any of these people that were presenting, and they immediately swung into action around, you know, the themes of action, hope, and transformation. Which actually built that presupposition of, you know, we're going to actually, this does make a difference. You will see a difference. You know, if you get involved, if equine therapy is something that you think, having seen this now, is something that you think is going to be useful for you, getting involved is actually going to make a significant difference. So it was a very interesting switch that happened over the course of the 4 weeks. We actually started getting people getting back in contact with us and saying, I want to be able to connect with that presenter. Right? I want to be able to see what's going on there. So how is that different, that experience of people then coming together in the space that is the veteran wellbeing space? How different is that from what we've experienced in the past?
Well, the difference is that you can access it from your home or your workplace. You can access it in your own time with your family. So it was really good to put it out there, other than just going to a location and attending a seminar with a lot of people. A lot of veterans don't like the crowd thing and all that sort of stuff, and also the travelling. So to have it delivered online, very flexible, was fantastic. So many people can get benefit out of it at little or no cost. All you needed was an internet connection, and you're ready to go. So it was really good to be delivered online, and having it live. A lot of them live it made it more authentic. And like I said earlier, we didn't know where things were going to go until they happened. And the comments that we got afterwards and during the presentations was great. So this sort of thing in Australia hasn't really been pushed along that much. Like I said, everyone sort of attended these seminars. You go along to a seminar, someone stands there and tells you this, and this. This way you're able to interact, or you can just turn your monitor off or your screen off and just listen. So it was really good.
For me, Jacqui, one of the things that was absolutely glaring, and again, I don't know about our international guests, but in Australia, the veteran health area is very territorial. You will have different service organisations that wish to state that they control this, or they know the most, or they know best. You have different government departments that are doing the same, and sometimes it causes conflict. The great thing about the Wellbeing Summit, there was no territorial issues, and we had different organisations coming in, different medical groups as well coming in, all sharing the information readily and together. And that is something that I've actually haven't seen before.
And freely.
And freely, yeah.
It was really, really good.
So I have to say that you know, Darren and Dan were my Jiminy Crickets on my shoulder, going, these people will never talk to each other. These people will never get involved together. You know, just be careful. You know, and they did. They actually, when we set the framework around, you know, we're not going to talk about the problems. We just want to talk about what works. It was quite amazing, wasn't it? Seeing. And lasting too, because we've actually still got some of those groups still connecting and working together, yep. Which has been, I would be hopeful that would be an ongoing fruit of of what we've actually started here.
Well, that's
another thing. Sorry, Darren. I just want to focus on something you said before in regards to that activity in 2019. It's sort of, everyone had access to it. So it wasn't just the veterans. So Darren pointed out that Australian culture of treating a veteran is sometimes, and depending on who's paying for the treatment, is very isolating. So the veteran gets the treatment, but not always the family. What this activity is doing is it's an allowing not just the veteran to gain access and information, but family and support people. And I think that's very important.
So it's quite a democratising what's available, yeah, and making it, yeah.
And there were a lot of professionals in the veteran space that actually joined in and watched what was going on. So that was really good. So they could share and find out what else is going on, how they can help veterans. Yeah. And that was really, really good. And with the different organisations, instead of going it alone, some of them are talking now and sharing ideas and sharing their expertise.
The big word, Dan and Jacqui and Wayne, it was collaboration. And it's something, you know, we've seen it on micro scales before, but never this many together. And you know, the best form we can do for anything is with collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's been that's taken a lot of people by surprise, I have to say, which is good, you know, which is good. And we'll just keep powering on. One of the things that I think was, in terms of, you know, a truly solution-focused approach, and I just want to share this with the people who are interested in how did we measure how successful we had been. We got our data sources from a number of different places. The main area was around impact survey data, where we actually surveyed people at the end of every webinar, or at the end of every live event, asking them some very specific questions. I'll give you the feedback from that in a little bit. But we wanted to know also too about the levels of interactions and attendance. It wasn't just the number of people turning up, wasn't just our success measure. We were blown away by the number of people who turned up. You know, I thought that we ran a program, you know, with maybe 50 or 60 people would turn up, and if we had 10 presenters over a week, I'd be really chuffed. You know, the fact that we reached so many people over that time and had that many other, you know, people coming forward to actually present, attracted by that, let's talk about the solutions, was really inspiring. We did the population breakdown, people identifying as, you know, 74% identified as veterans, and partners of veterans, family of veterans, and some of these, there's a bit of crossover, obviously. Ex-service organisations and service providers, and our other tended to be, it was an interesting group of people that were actually a lot of researchers in the area. Were the sessions informative? You know, I think we actually did quite well on that score. But now we're starting to get to some of these more solution-focused type measures, Was it thought-provoking? We wanted people to actually not be comfortable listening to what they were viewing or the session they were part of. We wanted it to actually spark something in them, to actually get them to think more deeply about how was that particular presentation, whether it be on animal assistance animals, whether it be on mission, purpose and identity. What was it? Or, you know, is it actually getting me to start thinking about how this relates to me, and what more I can do? And then, was it useful? You know, we wanted to know, and remembering these are opt-in, so we weren't forcing people to sit through, you know, all of the sessions in a day in a locked room. They were actually able to dip in and out of the things that they wanted to see and be part of. Now, this was really encouraging, that we were actually finding we'd hit on a formula that we thought we know now is actually being quite useful for people. And this is the thing that we really liked the most. Are we motivated to find out more? Right? Do you guys want to comment on any of that?
Well, the data, the gathering of the data and all the other data that you do have is sort of, I think this is sort of the first time like a veterans, especially an online forum like this, or veteran-centric forum has collected data in this fashion, in this way. So the collection of data has been used for many years, but not in this manner. So for us to gauge on how the summit went with that data is awesome, and that sort of set the bar for a lot of other things that we're doing now locally in our own ex-service group, where we've started veterans programs, exercise programs, and a few other things. And we're going to, and we've already talked about measuring those programs through the same sort of data gathering. So, and that way it makes sure that we're on the right track, and that we're getting value for our dollar in supporting and promoting veterans' health. So the data is really, really important.
I think one of the things that we can't push heavily enough is the data was raw. It hadn't been sanitized, it hadn't been cleaned up, and it hadn't been put in a way that we wanted to see it, which is a problem with some of the other areas of the veteran data
collection.
Better going down that, so I've changed. So what I will say is, though, I won't put anything up, but I will say the data that was collected by us was true and it was raw. There had been no sanitisation, and there was nobody. We didn't have to pass it up to anybody for them to tick it off and say, "Oh yeah, this looks okay," or "This doesn't." It was just real.
Yep. So it was an awesome surprise for us every time. So we didn't know what we were going to expect. But for those who are interested in these things, I should let you know what our sample size was, so that you can see that we're not just speaking through our hats here. We did have a population of 10,000 required a sample size to get that level of confidence, that margin of error. We needed about 370 responses, and we got 1,250 to the longer responses. Some of the short polls we got a lot more than that, but for the longer response polls surveys, we got that number. So that in itself was pretty useful. The thing that we did too is actually create an impact and engagement index. And I think that those of you who work in solution focused areas, it doesn't matter whether it's in therapy or whether it's in organisational applications, is that how do you prove what you're doing is actually working? And I know that Rod's session this morning was how do you know what you're doing is working? So we actually came up with an engagement and impact index, and then applied that index to every session, and then built the model for each of the sessions. So we were really interested in what was happening down in this bottom right hand corner. And when we analysed that, we came up with this. that it was veterans who were seeking more skills and techniques to learn more about how to manage and nurture their own mental health, wellbeing, and mental health, physical health. And also the partners wanted that for themselves, for their partner, for their veteran partner, but also too for their families. So based on that, we then started to pull together the program for 2020, and we're taking quite a different model. We've still got the webinars happening, we still have those sort of open sessions, but we've also moved into a lot of work to do with actual workshops, where there's a lot more interaction rather than just through a webinar. And so one of the key areas which you may or may not be aware of is transition. How, you know, that leaving, when you leave defence, and then moving into, if you're leaving defence, then going off to work somewhere else in the civilian street, you know, how do you actually make that happen? And one of the workshops or speakers that we had in 2019 who came back to us in 2020 to run workshops was the team from Story Right and Mind Right, where they're actually taking the value in your military service and training and translating that into civilian speak. So how do you use that as a resource? So from, instead of walking out and going, this world doesn't understand me, they're actually taking their skills and translating them into some language and format that people are actually going to understand. So we've had some interesting conversations around this. So that transition piece, have you guys got some comments on that? We talked about it a bit yesterday, Wayne, with you were actually fortunate. You came out with qualifications.
Jacqui, I'll start up.
Okay.
It's one of the, so if you're getting out, either do you have an incapacity, a permanent incapacity of some sort, or temporary, or even just getting out healthy and strong, you're still going to find the qualifications you received in the military don't immediately or necessarily marry up immediately into civilian street. To have these professionals and being able to direct to these professionals that actually can explain and show, and also show the education institutes that will give you recognised prior learning, it's so important. Walking out as a combat field engineer into civilian street, if they're not aware, they may feel they have no qualifications at all. I'm only using this as an example, when in fact, when you marry it up to civilian qualifications, you know, for the mine, in the mining sector and in Australia, mines are such a big industry, they're very, very well sought after. But unless they're actually shown where the military qualifications marry up with civilian qualifications, they have no idea.
Yep, yep. So these workshops that we've been running have been a really, it's been such an interesting process to actually watch very skillful, without knowing it, solution-focused practitioners working with these ex-service people to actually build their story into, yes, I've got all of these resources behind me, I've got capability, I've got useful skills that I can actually now go and apply somewhere else. So it's been a really, it's a gentle approach, and it's not telling them how to suck eggs. It's very much on the individual to actually be encouraged to tell their story. So it's been a real privilege to be watching those happen. The other thing that came out of last year was very core to, obviously, to our intention was to actually have some very specific skills around solution-focused approaches to suicide prevention and also to combat and operational stress recovery. What we were finding, and certainly, you know, everybody on the panel today was finding, is that you do actually find yourself being the accidental counsellor. You can't be having a conversation with someone, and if they express their you know, anxiety or upset or their intention to suicide, you can't actually say, hold that suicidal thought while I go and get a professional for you. You've actually got to be skilled enough to be able to manage that conversation to a happy conclusion, or to a better place if you can. So one of the things that we did this year was to have John Hendon. I know some of you will know John, some of you actually probably even know him personally as well as professionally, to actually deliver these workshops to us online. And so Dan, you were part of those. What was your impression of the energy and the way in which those discussions and workshops flowed? And he's on the phone, is he? He's on the phone. Okay, so we had, so he's actually in the office. So those workshops we had running, we had people who were not necessarily psychologists, who were definitely we had some, but not many. We had a couple of doctors on as well, but the vast majority of people were like the guys who are on the panel today, was that they give of their time to their ex-service organisation, supporting their mates, supporting their colleagues in a variety of different ways. But they will be the first ones who see signs that things might not be working as well as they could be. They're the ones that actually need to have those skills to be able to direct a conversation around in a particular way. So Dan, we're back to you. Is that an emergency call? So the workshops with John Hendon, your thoughts? Because I know you were on both of those.
The suicide awareness and prevention.
Yep.
Very, very intensive, but very, very, very basic in getting the word across in layman's terms. There wasn't any big technical words and medical stuff, and a lot of the resources and what he was promoting and what works, the very basic tools that the average person can easily pick up. So, especially if someone comes into an office and they're a bit under the weather, you're able to sort of maybe identify and prompt them in the right way. And so it actually built up your confidence in being able to deal with something or being approached if there's something not right. So it was 4 days, very intensive, but a lot of value. It was amazing. My head was just throbbing at the end of it. So I was like, but it was well worth it. Yeah.
Oh, it was 28 hours of professional development, which was interesting. What I think was what we're doing with that in terms of, how can we measure what we're doing, and is it working for us? We took a pre-survey and post-workshop survey, and the solution focus question in there was about your confidence levels to be able to deal with a conversation now, and bring it to a successful or a positive conclusion. So we did a pre-snapshot and a post-snapshot. Now, the preliminary data on that, because we've still got some of that, we've only just finished those workshops, so that data's still coming in, is that we are seeing on a 10-point scale between 1.5 and 2.5 points increase in confidence, self-reported confidence. And there was a whole lot of commentary that went along with that as well, about specifically what it was that actually is making them more confident, and how they can see that their skill level has changed, and what specifically specifically what was that, or what is it that they're then going to be implementing in their jobs, whether it be in a volunteer position or in some sort of paid wellbeing role. We're also following up with a university here where I've had a long-standing relationship with the university in Sydney. We're going to actually then be undertaking telephone interviews with the participants between the end of August and November to see how that practice is actually being embedded in the work that they're doing, and to get some sort of feel as to the longevity or the effectiveness of this type of workshop. So we're really looking forward to seeing those results. So I think that we will, we'll be in a position to actually publish some of that information, which would be, I think, useful for all of us. I'm using the words deliberately useful and not helpful, because I think useful is actually a better solution-focused word. But I think that that's where we, as practitioners in this area, whether it be in mental health, whether it be in organisational, and I know some of the conversation we've been having today has crossed over both worlds, but I think it's really critical that we, in our own practices in this area, start to collect data and start to do some of those analysis, work through the analysis, so that we can actually show that this approach is a lot more empowering approach for people.
One of the other, the main consensus was that it also gave people a tool to help govern themselves and look after their own mental health, which is very important, while you're interacting with other people and those circumstances that, if they do arise. So it also helped give you, the participant, a bit of a guidance in what might not be right with you, or what's going on, and how to deal with it in a very basic but meaningful way. So it was really good.
Another very important tool that was gotten out of that was for those significant others and partners, like educating them what actually happens with mental health issues, and a toolbox to help assist the families.
Yeah, really critical. We did have quite a number of partners who are actually involved in that, and I think the feedback from them was very specifically that that they now had tools. They now knew how to actually direct a conversation at home, how they could actually help their partner, how they could help their kids, because there's a lot of referred trauma that goes on in families as well. So the sorts of things that they could actually engage in locally without having to be saying, I'm helpless, I can't do this, I need a medical professional, I need someone to actually help me all the time. It actually gave them a lot of skill, gave them a really good skill base.
Well, one of his books that I've got, that I'm going through at the moment, it's called Beating Combat Stress. Yeah. And that's it there. I'm not trying to sell it, so don't worry. But it's not a hard read. It's not a hard read. It's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, and there's lots of information in there, really basic information that you sit there going, wow, why didn't I think of this before? So it's not hard. It's like I said, the main thing for me was all the big technical medical terms and stuff like that, and it's just not in his books, which is really good for someone who's trying to either help people or trying to help themselves. Really interesting, well worthwhile.
And I think that's it, Dan. I think that this is probably some of the dilemma that solution focused practitioners, either therapy or organisational, often face, is that what we do and the methods that we engage and the language that we use is actually really simple. There's no sort of complexity around it, yet the complexity of change that happens as a result of that is huge. The process itself is actually very simple, and that's what I think is so appealing, is that and refreshing, is that it is actually very simple in terms of the language and the way in which we have those conversations.
I think one of the main things about the Wellbeing Summit is its empowerment. It empowers the individual, it empowers their significant others, it empowers their family. And at no stage do we ever say this is instead of or replacing medical advice, or it's just additional researched programs that you can try.
Yeah, exactly. And just opening up that opportunity for something different. Just moving on, and so we're coming up to wrap up. Does anyone from the floor have any questions that they'd like to ask or comments that they would like to make? Feel free. Awesome.
That hour's gone already, and there's so much more we could cover.
I know.
You could go on for hours.
There's literally loads of information that we have. But I think that just in summary, I mean, we gave all of our videos, the videos from every session are available on the curated website. So it's all the W's, veteranwellbeingsummit.com.au. So we've curated all of those there for people to access at any time. But I think that some of the things that arose out of the analysis, which I think is really useful for people to hear about now, because it actually has applications across a wide range of solution-focused contexts, is that, first of all, exploring the past, okay, leads to blame. And one of our goals was to actually develop responsibility for the future. And that came out really clearly in all of the sessions, and certainly in the feedback. People were saying it was quite liberating for them to hear about, where do we go from here? How do I make that happen? Diagnosis, and I think this is a really big one with this particular community, is diagnosis does not have to determine the future. So even with severe injury, incapacitation, there's always a future to be explored and planned for, actioned and lived. And I think that was something that was really, that came through very, very clearly, is that you do not have to be, even though you might need a label for the, say the welfare, for the pension, for your superannuation, etc. You don't necessarily need to be the label. Did you want to say something about that, Darren? Because you speak about this quite a lot.
Well, one of the things that I've experienced working with a lot of veterans that operate from defence with permanent impairments. They're diagnosed with a permanent impairment, and something that inevitably seems to happen, and in particular with those that don't have support or positive support, they become labelled, they become the impairment. So we have people that have got serious injuries, amputees, serious mental conditions. When they first come for assistance, they're struggling. But if they don't, if they embrace that label, if they embrace the permanent incapacity and say, I can't do this because I'm permanently incapacitated, their health deteriorates dramatically. So one of the things we always say when somebody comes in for assistance is say, look, we see that you're clearly have those impairments. We will assist you through the bureaucratic minefield, but we ask that you try to stay as positive as you can, to get a positive group around you, and don't become this impairment. And that's something that one of the things we do from where we work at, Jacqui, that it's about positive interaction. It's not about becoming the disability. Embrace your disability. It is part of your life, but it doesn't have to be who you are.
Exactly. Any other final comments, Dan? You're still muted, mate.
Not going real. Yeah, I think Darren hit it on the head there. So you can get trapped in the treatment path, and it's a never-ending minefield, and it can be soul-destroying. So you've got to try and get the information, alternative information on alternative therapies, and we've got to try to encourage that. So, and it empowers people. Yeah. It gives them choice. Because sometimes when you're stuck in that on that path, you don't feel like you've got a choice.
Exactly.
And Rod Sherwin just made a really good point, and it was probably the language that I used. It's so important for people with serious illness as well, not just
anyone
or mental injuries, but illness as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Can I just we'll wrap up now because it's right on the clock. But can I just say thank you so much to our panel today. So join me in thanking Dan and Darren and Wayne for being here, and sharing from a very personal perspective too, because it is their lived experience as much as anything else. And I really appreciate that. And some of these guys have become very good mates of mine over this journey. So I really appreciate them personally as well. it's great having you as mates, but also being able to engage with you in this really important work. And thank you for being with us. It was a different type of conversation, but a conversation that brought together some SF principles in terms of presupposition and how you can actually start to change conversations around some pretty vexed issues. So thank you for being with us. Loved having you.
Thank you for inviting us, Jacqui. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.